Good morning. I'd like to invite you into this sacred space where together we can experience our true nature. This month we are exploring Polishing the Mirror of the Heart. This was a book that was written by Ram Dass recently before he made his transition. And one of the chapters in that book was being with what is. And we are exploring that idea this Sunday morning. Just being with what is. And so we start with what is right now. We're sitting in our chair. Hopefully align your spine. You feel your chakras aligned. In my years of teaching yoga, one of the first things you do is you pay attention to the breath. And you breathe all the way into the belly. And then you exhale, and in that exhalation you release whatever tension you might be holding, whatever thoughts that might be spinning around in your mind. And just by practicing conscious breathing, we empty ourselves out. And we can be here now, being with what is. We look at the world outside of us and we see there's a coronavirus on the planet. There's an election taking place. There is a lot of emotion, a lot of opinion, a lot of drama. But for the purpose of this time together, we are taking our attention away from the outer and we're putting it to the inner space. And we're consciously breathing. And so this is our practice, is to be still, to be here now, and to be with whatever arises in the present moment. I reflect on the teachings of Paul the Apostle, who in his book, his letter to the Philippians, he admonished them to practice three things. He says, do not worry, because Paul understood that worry is faith in a limited idea, and it's a wasted emotion. So he says, do not worry. The second thing he admonished was, in your asking, do it with gratitude, because he recognized that when we come from a grateful place, more can come to us and through us and for us. So I'm grateful to be alive and well and sitting here in Huntsville, Alabama. And I ask that the planet awaken to its spiritual magnificence and that we consciously evolve, knowing that this coronavirus has assisted us in bringing us together as a community in service to one another. Asking with gratitude. Explore that in your own life. And the third thing Paul suggested to the Philippians was observe an abiding peace, a peace that passeth all understanding, and let this peace guard your hearts and guard your minds. And so for this time together, I invite you to recognize that peace that has never left you, peace that is always there. I like to think of it as the eye of the storm. The storm can be on the outside, but on the inside we can find that still point and take refuge there. Breathing in peace and breathing out peace. A little fearful emotion or thought might arise, but we can just see it arise and fall away because we have chosen not to worry. We have chosen to be grateful in advance of our asking, and we have chosen to rest in peace as peace and let that peace guard our thoughts, guard our minds, and guard our hearts. A simple practice, but a practice is only of value when we practice it. So this Sunday morning, we are going to practice together. being attentive to our breath, attending to the moment. Mary Oliver recently made her transition, and near the end of her life she said, the most important facet of my life is just to attend to the moment, whatever that moment might bring. And so we are attending to this moment right now, embracing whatever arises, embracing the life that we've been given. And then, with as much compassion and gentleness, we're navigating this life. Being gentle with ourselves and gentle with each other. Feel the presence, feel the peace. Make a commitment to abide as that. And when the peace is ready to open her eyes, his eyes, I invite you to come into the room. Whether you're in virtual land or whether you're here at the center, it's about showing up and being here with each other and taking the next step. We had a lovely revealing service. We have those on Sunday mornings, and for those of you who do need the Sangha, the community, we start at 9:45. It's for half an hour. And it's a beautiful opportunity in this mass experience to touch hearts and minds and what we're all challenged with. And I find it so revealing for me that every Sunday morning I'm hearing my own self express its frustrations, its confusions, its challenges in balancing the energies of life. Someone said this morning their egoic self is the part of them that is all afraid. So how to move from the ego into the soul, and yet at the same time to not shame the ego, because the ego oftentimes gets a bad rap. You know, in a lot of Eastern teachings they talk about killing the ego. What a violent act. You know, my beloved Jake over here, when he is struggling sometimes with his egoic responses, I'll remind him it's an act of violence when we want to get rid of the anxious self, or the fearful self, or the worried self, because that's just part of what we are as human beings. So could our divinity love our humanity and not try to be Superman or Superwoman who has no fear of the coronavirus and rips off their shirt and says, I can fly and do it and I don't have it and I'm immune? Or are we going to be someone that says, no, I'm going to put on the mask and be cautious because I care about you and I want to be safe and I want to be respectful of your space. And none of us knows, truly none of us knows. I remember Hank went for a flu shot and he had Guillain-Barré. I was with him at that time. None of us knows when the universe is going to give us this cosmic 2x4, and yet we have to navigate through those times. So it's important to question who we are. The old Ramana Maharshi question, who am I? Am I the finite self that wails and suffers? Or am I that infinite presence that lies stretched in smiling repose? And the truth is that we're both. So knowing that we're both, can we find a balancing act so that we're divinely human and humanly divine, and we get to cherish this life that we've been given for however long. I was listening to Jack Kornfield, and everybody's trying to make sense at this time on the planet. And Jack Kornfield's this enlightened Buddhist teacher, and he just turned 74 with his wife. And he says, my wife and I had this conversation about, death's around the corner. Death's an inevitability. But what isn't an inevitability is how I die. Could I die consciously, lovingly? Consciously living and consciously die? Or am I going to make that dying process hell for me? My sister-in-law Susan just made her transition, and I must say that she, through her example, showed so much grace in making her transition. She was peaceful, she was loving. Her devoted dog Henry was by her side right up until the very end. And when she left, she wanted to be at home. Friends came to visit her, and I think she left on a Thursday. She left on Raoul's birthday, and she said it was very peaceful. And the day before Susan left, it was so interesting. Trey felt her presence in the dining room. He said it was as if there was a breeze that was blowing, and there was this whistling, this austere, and he says, I still hear it. He says, and they always ask me, what does that mean, David? What does that mean? I said, well, what does it mean to you? And he says, well, I think she came to let me know that she's free. And I said, I think you may be right. And he said, well, why did she come the day before? I said, maybe she had a few outings before she made the final outing. I don't know. You're asking me to speculate on this, but I said, I know that she loved you dearly. And so I asked him, are you grieving the loss? And he says, I'm going to miss our phone calls. I'm going to miss seeing her. But he said, I feel that she's always with me. He says, the thing that I miss the most is we share the childhood together. And she had all the memories that I forget because she was my older sister. So she remembers those moments that I sometimes tend to forget. And isn't that beautiful that we're having this conversation? Because all too often when there is a death, people, out of respect for the person, they don't want to talk about it. But sometimes we need to talk about it. Whether it's the ending of a relationship, whether it's a death of someone, whether it's the ending of a job. I find that when we don't look within and purge this stuff, it has a way of becoming toxic, repressed feelings. And then at some strange time, it surfaces and you think, what happened? It's because we don't allow this natural process of processing what life brings us. I had to have a heart attack in order for me to meet all that repressed stuff in my psyche. And I met a little boy who I'd abandoned when he was maybe 5 or 6. I told him to be a man, don't cry, don't have feelings. And so when he shows up at age 70, and he's still there, and he has feelings, and his modus operandi was to run away and hide in a tree, and he's still doing it at age 70. I said, maybe it's time for me to listen to him. And I asked him, I said, what do you want? And he says, I just want to be held. I just want to be heard. I don't want to be made wrong. I don't want you to get rid of me anymore. I want you to let me be a part of your life, because in a strange sort of way, I hold the magic. And he does hold the magic. He was the one that was filled with wonder. And he could talk to flowers and birds and bugs, and he still does. So what if we, in this healing dance, we get to embrace the allness of us and to inquire what would that look like? I did a wonderful class here called Shift into Freedom, and it's all about waking up on the 3 levels. He says, first, this presence wakes up, the peace wakes up, the love wakes up, the Buddha consciousness wakes up, the Christ wakes up. It wakes up when it's ready. Oftentimes when we have a 2x4 experience. I know that this divine love woke up for me when my first relationship ended and he walked out on me. And I was bereft. And I cried and cried and cried and cried until I realized that he wasn't the source of the love. I had to find the love within, and it took that for this love to awaken. So who knows what's going to... It took a heart attack for that little boy to come up. So sometimes life brings us these experiences in order for this something to awaken. And the second awakening, according to La Kelly, is you awaken in. You do the work on yourself. You embrace this neurotic thought process that says, am I out there trying to appease the world, or am I being my authentic self? You embrace that dialogue. That's the clarification stage. So then when confusion or anxiety comes, you say, come on in. I've been practicing since I came back from Colorado, a simple little practice. Psychologists, again, it's called RAIN. You recognize what arises and you allow it. And then you get intimate with it. You investigate it. And you realize that it's not a bad thing, because then you're nurturing it. We did our Healers on Healing class this week, and the people that presented spoke about the necessity of compassion in healing and the necessity of empathy. Because compassion, if you have compassion for someone, you will tend to do some action that's kind. If you have empathy for someone, you don't put their sadness down or their grief down, but you invite it to be present, and then you embrace the grief, you embrace the sadness. I got a phone call from a woman last night. I did her husband's memorial service a week ago, and she was going through some deep grief last night, and she just wanted to talk about him and cry. And I said, well, he's still here. I know you miss his form, but I said, now the challenge is for you to hear Stan as he speaks to your heart. Today is the 9th month since our beloved Paul made his transition. And he had his massive heart attack on my mother's birthday. I find this so interesting. Just like Trey's sister made her transition on Raul's birthday. And it's so funny when a birthday has to be aligned to a death. A beautiful man named Terry, he's in Mississippi, he and his wife Mary, they called me, and his mother made her transition, and he had moved to Mississippi to take care of her. And he says the strangest thing was that she died on my brother's birthday. And I said, well, now they get to share the same birthday. It's just about seeing it in a different way. So that was waking in, and then he talks about waking out. And this waking out, we extend ourselves to the community, we realize that it is us, that there is no out. And we begin to fall in love with everyone. When love awakens, it sees love everywhere. And so at the very end of the book, he describes what a human being would look like, who was awake, who was aware, and who was being with what is from a higher vibrational field of their true nature. And this is how he describes it. I loved his wording. He says, when we shift out of our ego identification, we feel free from the perpetual dissatisfaction that it expresses and this belief that it's separate from another. The ego sees itself as separate, but the soul knows that it's one with the one soul. He says the absence of this mini-me leads to relief and to relaxation and to peace of mind, to freedom from all striving, because it doesn't need to grasp at anything, nor does it push away. He says, however, we cannot live our lives from absence. The initial stage of non-ego and not knowing is not the destination of the water, but the transition of the letting go of the rope. I don't know what that means. He says, we must discover the presence of the ground of being in all capital letters, to find that we are this ground of being, not doing, being. We're not a human doing, we're a human being. So he says, we must discover the presence of the ground of being and learn how to operate from there. A group of essential qualities now arise when you live from this ground of being. They arise as support from that ground of being. And these qualities are joy, their boundlessness. You don't feel trapped. Their embodied presence. There's deep connection with everything and everyone. There's an open-hearted love, a love that loves chipmunks and even cockroaches, Tia. And there's an abounding creativity. Wow. When we're in that field of our true nature, its very nature is creative. It's playful. It's boundless. So the most important of these is this new knowing that doesn't return to the everyday mind for a second opinion. Did you hear that, Shay? This new mind of not knowing does not go to its local mind for a second opinion. This new not knowing actually knows. And it has to be developed for us to stabilize our functional awakening. We need to stabilize this not knowing that knows. Sounds kind of crazy, doesn't it? I of myself know nothing, but this power within knows everything. I remember there's a Zen saying that was my favorites for years, and it says, you know why you're so miserable? Because 99.9% of the things that you kvetch about are all about you, and you're not. So could we know from not knowing? This local mind doesn't have the answers. He's inviting us to that place. And this has to be developed for us to stabilize this functional awakening. And when we become familiar with this new awareness-based operating system, we begin to live from being. This new operating system. We were talking earlier about content versus context. What if the context, which is emptiness, boundlessness, freedom, spacious awareness, is what we are, and the content are like the little thoughts behind us that are in the radio of our mind that we can turn off just with a switch. Yada, 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 switch. And then we're living in the context of the spacious field of awareness that doesn't have the answers, that doesn't need to know answers, whereas the little mind wants to have the answers, wants to figure it out, wants to fix it, wants to control it. We're not there. We're not operating from there. It's a different operating system. Then he says, when we're seeing from this open-hearted space, we find that our thoughts, our feelings, and our sensations, both the pleasant ones and the unpleasant ones, they'll still arise, but they're rising in an embodied awareness. And there's no separate self to attach to them or feel threatened by them. No separate self to attach to them or analyze them or question them or push them away or grasp at them. She's not running the show anymore. You're free of her. What would life be like if you were free of yourself? That's the question I live with all the time. You know, I can tell when I'm caught up in my egoic me place because I'm in a reactive place. I'm in a judgmental place. I'm in a critical place. I'm in a place of struggle oftentimes. It's a push-pull. This person's right, this person's wrong. And I'm not free. But when I'm in this responsive place, I'm actually kind of goofing on the stuff of the world. I can see that karma doesn't have to be my karma. If someone's having a big hissy fit in a reaction, I don't have to put that storm on the outside, on the inside. I can be this embodiment of peace and love and clarity and still not detach or not disengage. I can stay present with what is. So that's the first step that I think he's speaking about, is to be that. Meister Eckhart, I said last week when I talked about breathing in and breathing out, which is the simple act of just being present. Meister Eckhart said, people come to me and they ask, what should I do? How should I pray? But he says, virtually nobody asks me the relevant question, which is, how should I be? So I'm inviting you this Sunday to just take that question to yourself. When we discover our beingness, then our doingness follows from that beingness. So if I'm being peaceful, my actions are peaceful actions. If I'm being compassionate, then my actions are compassionate. If I'm being empathic, then my actions and my doing would be from that empathic place that would save the little chipmunk that's been brought in the house. So then we can say, this is how I am being, and then be with what is, and what is just what is. It's not a bad what is, it's not a good what is. I can remember going to the hospitals and doing the ministry in the hospitals and questioning how should I be when I move into that room. And I realized that I'm no good to anybody if I'm being worried, fearful, controlling, analytical. What did they give me on the anesthesia? You know, I'm not really helping the person if I'm going down that path with them, but I can help them if I'm just being peaceful and I'm being loving. And sometimes I don't say anything, I'll just hold them. And oftentimes they'll say, well, I had a bad day today, but I had a good day yesterday. And I say, could we just call it a day and not make it a bad day or a good day? Sometimes what we call the bad day can be a day of major shifting. Sometimes it has to get bad before it gets better. So maybe the bad day was the doorway to the good day. But if we stop labeling bad and good, then every day is invited in. I love playing with that. Every day is sacred. So shift into this being peaceful. We did this class called Catching the Threads, and one of the presenters was a man named Hugh Prather. And he said, I live simply by two ideas. I love it when they say I live simply by two ideas. He says, the first idea is that I embrace the life that I've been given. Whatever this life has. If it has a herniated disc, if it has, sciatica, if it has chronic worry fatigue, I married a husband with chronic worry fatigue, and I've learned to live with it because he was raised with it, and he thinks if you care about someone, you worry about them. So could I embrace the life that I've been given? And then the second thing Hugh Prather says, and at the same time, navigate it mindfully, consciously, gently, sweetly. So we all have challenges out there in the world right now. And could we be grateful for this life? With all of its, our beloved Anne-Marie fell and broke her foot. Now, can she be gentle and loving with herself as she's going through this recovery process? So that's the life that we've been given, and the invitation is to be as loving as we can to that. I went to Richard Rohr because he also talks about living from being, and he's a little less technical of Locke Kelly. He's a little bit more Franciscan, and he talks about it simply from moving the ego into the soul. Now, we know that the soul wants to find meaning in life, that we're an eternal soul that was never born and never dies. We're a soul first with a body, and our soul is also an aspect of spirit. So this soul can be the psyche, that's the subconscious, or this soul can be the Atman, which is one with the Brahman. The Brahman is the all that is. So he's coming from it from a more spiritual perspective. And one of the things, he's such a renegade Franciscan monk. He takes on the church. And he says they really made a mistake in the Christian church when they put Jesus as the Son of God and then they put God up there in the heavens. He says because all the church fathers have talked about this thing called the Trinity, which is this divine presence which moves through the Holy Spirit and manifests as the Son, which is all of us, which is creation itself. So this triune nature, he said, is what we are. This spiraling energy of the presence moving through Holy Spirit and manifesting as form. It wasn't just Jesus. So here's how he put it. When you meditate consistently, and everything is a meditation, I would contend, a sense of your autonomy and private self-importance, what you think of as your local self, just falls away. It falls away little by little because it's unnecessary. It's unimportant, and it's even unhelpful. Your ego is your little tyrant. It wants to protect you. You don't need to be protected. It wants to be safe. Safe from what? Safe from dissolving into oneness? I mean, the ego hates the truth that you're nothing. So, no, it's really unhelpful, he says. This imperial I of the little self, the self that you likely think of as your only self, It reveals itself as largely a creation of your mind. Our ego is a creation of our mind. Now, if you're as old as I am, and you were given the mindset of your parents, they told you what they wanted your ego to be. A success, a responsible this or that, a real man. And if you were a little gay soul who wanted to dance and play with paper dolls, your soul was a little confused. But I did my very best to please them all. Through regular access to contemplation and meditation, you ultimately become less and less interested in protecting this self-created relative identity. You don't want to make this healthy ego. The initial Science of Mind classes where you want to treat for this perfect sense of me, it falls away because you realize you're propping up some false identity. That's what he's saying. You don't have to attack it, however. It calmly falls away of its own accord, and you experience a kind of natural humility. God, I wasn't that to begin with. You feel free, oh my God. It was doing the best it could. It was trying to make me into a real big somebody, only to realize that it's in my nobodiness that I found my freedom. So there's kind of a humility. I did it to myself. I have so damn many degrees. I was telling Jake, it took me to age 30 to have my midlife crisis when I had built all these false masks of who David Leonard was, and I had lost my soul along the way. So then I had to go within and I had to discover this aboriginal part of me that I was born with, that was free, that's playful like her little girl, and I don't, and he holds the jewels, he holds the crown. So if your prayer goes deep, invading your unconscious, as it were, your whole view of the world will change. You won't see it the same way. It'll change from fear to connection. You realize that I don't have to be afraid of the world because I'm not separate from the world. You don't have to be afraid of nature because I'm not separate from nature. If you've seen that movie called My Octopus Teacher, you realize he went into a whole different world, the world of sea kelp and freezing cold deep water and crustaceans and fishies and all kinds of life, and he wasn't afraid. He felt connected. Could we find this connection to the very thing that we're afraid of? It's not separate from us. He says, because you don't live inside your fragile and encapsulated self anymore. Now that's a compassionate thing to say. It's a fragile, encapsulated self. I like to think of it kind of like this. Well, I'm afraid and I just got to protect him because he's, I was raised to see you got to wear a mask and you got to wear your different outfits because you got to hide from people. That's what I was told, Right, because you don't live inside this fragile, encapsulated self anymore, and nor do you need to protect it. You don't need to run around protecting yourself by your defensiveness. We taught a class here at the center, we've taught so many over the years, and it was one of my favorites. It was called Undefended Love. It's only the little self that feels it has to be defensive. When you know what you are, you don't have to get defensive anymore. You don't have to make it about you. So in meditation, ultimately, he says, you move from this ego consciousness to a soul awareness. It's so simple, isn't it? But it's so profound. You move from this ego that wants answers, that wants to be protected, that wants to fix everything, that wants to be in control, to a soul awareness that lives in paradox, that loves to surrender and trust and be creative and boundless and free and adventurous and curious. Oh my God, where's the soul going to take me today? The soul wants to dance, right? You move from being fear-driven to being love-drawn. From being fear-driven to being love-drawn. Then love leads the way, and you allow it. You let this love to guide you. When I finally, my soul awoke, I was 25 years old. I was watching the musical, A Chorus Line, and Donna McKechnie was doing this big musical number. God, I'm a dancer, and a dancer dances. Give me somebody to dance for. Give me some place to fit in. All I ever needed was the music and the mirrors and the chance to dance for you. And in a holy instant, I thought, I got to get those leotards back on. I got to step back in that dance floor because my soul wanted to dance. So you're love-driven. You're not fear-driven. And that's it in a few words. And the last little thing he says, and this is where the Trinity comes in, of course you can only do this if someone else is holding you, all capitals. If there's this divine love holding you, this divine presence, there's a power in the universe that's greater than we are. Could we know that that is always loving us and supporting us? This isn't duality. We're a part of that. It's the ocean of love that we're a part of. So he says, it can only happen if there's something else, let's call it the grace of the universe, is holding us, taking away our fears doing the knowing. I myself don't know diddly squat, but this presence within knows everything. That's something else. The universal mind, not my local mind. And he says, it's holding you, it's taking you away from fear, and it's doing the knowing, and it's satisfying your desire for this great love. In other words, we don't have to look in the world for the great love anymore. This something else is the great love. And when it awakens, you feel this love that's so overwhelming that you no longer grasp its form. Really, you're free from that grasping. And you don't push away either, because it's all the great love. He says, if you can allow this something else to have its way with you, you will live with a new vitality, a natural gracefulness, and you will be inside a flow that you did not create. You're in the flow of life, in the flow of the universe, in the flow of love. You didn't create it, you're in it and of it. And you can surrender and trust it. That's the biggest thing, is to trust that. You know, that flow brought you here. I know that flow brought me to a center like this when I was 30 years old and I was lost and confused. And it invited me to go within and to discover that flow, to discover that love that had been waiting for me my whole life. So what if it's right here? The first week of this series I talked about the way home, and the irony is there is no journey home. You're already home. You've already arrived. So this space is already there. And so he says, trust this flow that you did not create. It is the life of the Trinity, and it is spinning through you. The life of the Trinity. So isn't that a lovely image? The Trinity? This Brahman, this divine, infinite life, and it moves through this energy of compassion, of forgiveness, of joy, of boundlessness, of creativity. That would be the Holy Spirit. And it manifests as all of this, all of the 10,000 things. It's all the Son. It's all the creation. It's not just Jesus himself. We're all the Son. And we are also all the Brahman. And we are also all the Holy Spirit. It's interesting. So what if we play on that? So I was looking at what are the beingness. Ram Dass said the beingness would to be here now. To be just fully present with what is in this present moment. His whole first book was about that. But then as he evolved, his last book was called Be Love Now. And they said Ram Dass at the very end of his life was just pure love. Everything was love for him. Everything. Even his guru, who had died, he said, my guru stroked me. That's how much he loved me. And Guruji's always here with me. And in his chapter called Being with What Is, I read it last night, he said, I'm looking at my hands and I'm watching my body decay. He says, I've got age spots, I'm all wrinkled. And he says, can I be with that part of myself? That part of me that's decaying, that's letting go, and not make it wrong. It's just part of the evolution of my soul. So he would say, be here now and be love now. Jesus, unlike Moses, who taught commandments, thou shalt not this, thou shalt not that, Jesus taught the Beatitudes. I like to call them the Beatitudes, and there were 8 of them. And they all started with one word, blessed. So to be a peacemaker, blessed are the peacemakers, Tia, who march in the Black Lives Matter, for they're the children of God. Blessed are the pure in heart, because they see God everywhere. So could I be pure in heart? Blessed are those that seek after righteousness, because they shall be quenched. You know, we come here to seek the truth. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are the merciful. So he's telling us how to be merciful, to be humble. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Those are the ones that don't have all the answers. They're the ones that are teachable and say, I don't know. You know, they're poor in spirit. They're humble. Show me the way. Teach me and show me the way. So these are all attitudes of being that he pointed the way to, but unless you take it, it doesn't mean anything. I thought of Victor Hugo. When I was a very young man, I was 21 years old, and my relationship ended after college, and my heart was broken. And someone gave me this pearl, and it was a saying of Victor Hugo's, and it said, be like the bird, who pausing for a while on boughs too slight, feels them give way beneath her, yet sings, knowing she hath wings. And the bough that I was standing on, the relationship that I had invested so much time and energy in, had fallen away. I'm over there in Corfu, Greece, and I have a little saying, bless you, by Victor Hugo that's helping me know that I'm going to get through this. To just be like the bird. I thought of Rumi, who talked about, be the love that you are. And he says, all swimming in that ocean of love ends in drowning. So what that says to me in a seemingly violent way is there's no longer you, there's just the love. And then you no longer have to be separate from anything because you have become the very love that you are. He also said, my life can be summed up by 3 words. I burned, and I burned, and I burned. He burned up in this love, where there was no longer him as separate from that love. There was just the love. So he's showing this in a rather radical way. And when Rumi came into my life, I was a mess. Gigi can attest. I was sobbing every Sunday. Trey almost divorced me at that stage of life because I didn't know how to handle what was happening. Well, now I know that the beloved and I are one, that we're not separate. And so I'm going to close with a little prayer from Jeff Foster, who talks about being the open heart in the middle of the broken heart, that they're not separate. And he does a beautiful prayer of oneness. And could we be with what is from a conscious awareness that we're one, with not only what is, but with what isn't. What is greater than all of that? That's something else. This is a prayer of the awakened heart. And it says, may life be sanctified with our attention and with this kindly awareness called love. And this would be my prayer. Here's his prayer. I am here. I am here. And it's okay. Even though it doesn't feel okay, it's okay. And my sadness is intelligent. And my fear is ancient. And it is sacred. And it is worthy. My loving burns with life. And even my doubts are my kin. Nothing is wrong here. All is held in love. He says life is so short, yet this love is infinite and bountiful and ever present, and it is closer than my next breath. So I do not look for love, I do not wait for it, I do not expect it on demand, but I know it. I know its presence. I know the intimacy of this love, and I feel it now whispering in my ear. And this is the voice of love. It says, I breathe with you. I breathe with you, my love. Every inhale, every exhale, and the spaces in between. And when you are on your knees, exhausted by life's chaos and uncertainty, I am kneeling there with you. And when you are exalted and held up high by this fickle world, well, I am there rejoicing with you. And when you feel lost and you cannot go on, I already have found you. Here, here, always here. I am so very near. I laugh with you. I cry with you. I bleed with you. Your blood is my blood. Your voice is my voice. Your silence is my silence. And I would go to the ends of the earth to find you and to fight for you and to bring you home. You cannot escape love. That is why you cannot grasp the love. And so if I had a prayer, it would be already answered. The prayer and the resolution as one, the gift given a long ago. The heart awakened is abiding in this loving kindness now. And so let's move into that space that Jeff has invited us to experience, that intimacy with love, with life, with the breath, with each other. And let's allow everything to be present in there, the sadness, the confusion, the thoughts that arise, the emotions that sometimes feel uncomfortable. And know that there is this something that is holding all of this. And we are that something, and we are that which is being held. We are both. And we feel this connection, this ineffable connection of our broken heart with our open heart, of our local self with a non-local self, of our egoic mind in an infinite mind, with our conceptual knowing logically from the local mind to the vast not knowing from that spacious mind that contains all of us. And so we experience the yoga of being with what is this Sunday morning. And what is now embraced in a blessed sort of way. Not the doer, not the fixer, not the questioner, not the judge, but we've slipped out of those identities and we've fallen into that which contains all of them. The lover, the compassionate one, the gentle one, the curious one, the imaginative one. And we invite this divine imagination to surprise us as we explore the possibilities that the universe would have us consider. Not the facts, not the conditions, not the prognostications of the pundits, but we fall into this creative imagination of the divine loving presence that created all of this mystery and beauty for us to be in awe and wonder. So we invite that level of consciousness into us this Sunday morning as we navigate the life that we've been given in a joy-filled, creative way, where around every turn we can see the divine showing us how to be. Maybe it's the bird who sings her song, not because she has a message to deliver the world, because she has a song to sing and she's going to sing it. Or maybe we could find inspiration from the tree that sheds its leaves, that doesn't cling to last year's growth, but knows that it's in getting naked and feeling its vulnerability with the winter season that this new life begins to surge through the roots and bursts forth next year as a new stage of life, a new growth. Could we be willing to let the leaves fall in our life and then take refuge in our roots as we come to the root of the root of the root of the self, the one self that we're all rooted in. So we revel in the magnificence and the diversity of the beingness of life that wants to be here now as us, that wants to be love now as us, and we say yes, 1,000 times yes. This life belongs to you. Do with it as you will. And in that deep surrender, we wait upon the Lord, as the Bible says. And we trust in this beautiful thing called life. I invite you to put your hands over your heart and feel that sacred heart that we share. It's the spiritual heart. And say with me the heart salutation, honoring that place that we all share, that is the something else that is holding all of us. And let's say to that space, I honor you.
I honor you.
I respect you.
I respect you.
I love you.
I love you.
You are the deepest aspect of myself.
You are the deepest aspect of myself.
The beloved in me bows to the beloved in you.
The beloved in me bows to the beloved in you.
As we dissolve into that,
As we dissolve into that,
there is only one here.
there is only one here.
Open your eyes, open your hands, and let yourself be that. And have fun, and fly. And thank you for sending in your ties, and thank you for showing up with your masks. Be safe. I love you.